Welcome back. New Fox Business polls show former President Trump holding on to a strong lead in South Carolina. Former Governor Nikki Haley is gaining ground in her home state. She's in second place there now, followed by Florida Governor Ron DeSantis. Now, those same polls find Trump also well in the lead in Iowa, followed by DeSantis. However, the biggest move there is Haley, who went from 5% support in July there to now 11%. Joining us right now to assess the situation is the chairman of Stagwell and CEO and the Harris Poll chairman, Mark Penn. He's also a former senior advisor to the Clintons. Mark, great to see you. Thanks for joining the conversation. Assess what you're seeing. What strikes you most?
Well, this is interesting because these primaries are all about momentum. You know, when you look at Iowa voters are generally a little bit more conservative than most Republican primary voters. But so I think Trump's going to definitely win Iowa. The question is who's number two. And right now, Nikki Haley is showing real momentum. Half the voters are women. She's the only woman candidate. She's positioned herself a little bit more moderate on abortion, and she seems to be gaining in all the polls.
Well, look at this new Fox News power ranking polls that show former President Trump remains the clear frontrunner. His nearest challengers in order: Ron DeSantis, Vivek Ramaswamy, Nikki Haley, Tim Scott, and Mike Pence. Chris Christie apparently a wild card here. How surprised are you that Trump keeps gaining even though he's got 4 indictments to deal with?
Well, I'm not surprised because his opposition can't consolidate. So the question is, look, as long as it's Trump against a pack, Trump is going to win. But is this field going to narrow down, and when? And when are people going to get out, like they did in the Democratic primary last time, and said, look, we need to consolidate around Biden?
Well, what is it? Wasn't there a recent poll that shows Trump beating Biden?
Well, yes, Trump's ahead of Biden, but Nikki Haley is actually ahead of Biden in my poll by 4 points, and some of the other polls by even 6 or 8.
I see.
Yeah, I think that the momentum from Nikki Haley is interesting as well. You mentioned the sort of moderate stance on abortion, and I wouldn't even call it moderate per se because she's very pro-life, but she has struck a very pragmatic tone that a lot of the candidates are missing, where she's recognizing that even though I am personally and politically pro-life, there is only so much that you as a president can do with a divided Congress. And even if you had a fully Republican-controlled Congress, there's only so much you can do. And the voters recognize that, right? Voters recognize they don't like politicians who make these big, sweeping campaign promises and then never follow through on them. Nikki Haley is intentionally not doing that, and I think voters appreciate it.
Yeah.
You know, Nikki Haley, she's surging. She wasn't challenged in the last debate at all. Everyone came armed with ammo against Vivek, and only Vivek. Now,
and Mike Pence just did that again with against Vivek.
Yeah, so now with Nikki Haley surging, I would expect in the next debate the candidates are going to come armed with ammo against her. And one of the things she's running on is fiscal discipline. Now, when you look at all the governors that were up there on that stage during the first debate, nobody grew the size of their state government more than Nikki Haley. So I would expect that they're going to come armed with that kind of information, and they're going to dispute some of the things she's running on.
What do you think?
Well, look, I think everybody gets a one debate bump. I think Ramaswamy had his one debate bump. I think the question is, will Nikki Haley get a second bump and start to break out here? You know, I did an analysis of the Republican primary electorate. 51%, according to the Wall Street Journal poll, are suburban voters. Half are women. And in 23 states, independents vote, which is why the nominees were people like Romney and McCain. They weren't Rick Santorum or Cruz. Right. And Trump used to be the outsider candidate. He's the insider, very conservative candidate now. So I think there's going to be a much more interesting race than people think.
Well, what about this? Your latest op-ed, and you wrote about some of this in the Republican paradox, conservative voters who nominate moderates. Tell us more about that, because if you talk to Donald Trump, he was on the show a couple of weeks ago, he told me he's actually moving the needle on suburban women.
Well, we'll see whether that really sustains itself. I think he's moving the needle in the general election on suburban women who are concerned, number one, about the economy and are really upset about this economy. But in the primary electorate here, Nikki Haley could really pick up with suburban women voters. She could really emerge now as the, quote, opponent. Look, if no real opponent emerges and they all knock each other out, Trump's going to win. right?
Yeah,
and
that's
if
an
one
interesting-
opponent
yeah.
emerges, you'll have a real primary, and maybe someone will defeat Trump whose support is around 50%.
It's interesting that you brought up that this is exactly the strategy Democrats used the last time around with Biden, where you had people like Buttigieg and Amy Klobuchar surging in key primary states. And yet what did they do? They dropped out because they realized that Biden was the most likely candidate to defeat Trump. Why can't Republicans do that? Why can't we consolidate around a challenger? If we don't think that Trump can win in a general, why can't we consolidate?
Well, I think it's a little early to do that, but it's got to happen in the next 30, 45 days for sure.
Is Glenn Youngkin still expected to stick to Virginia, or do you think he enters?
I just think it's a little late for him to enter, and it's too crowded a field. I don't think he's going to come in now and take it. I think he'll just make everything more convoluted if he came in.
Yeah, I mean, look, one area we're not going to see much of a debate, I don't think, is the Democrat primary, right? I mean, the Democrats do not want any debating. Although recently you've seen some media say we're ready to throw Joe overboard. David Ignatius' column, Maureen Dowd. What's going on the Democrat side?
Well, I think there was always going to be a lot of pressure on Biden during these 30 days, because this is the time that he has to make the final decision. It's the only time that other people could really get in. And I think he's sticking to the decision. I think the Democratic Party is sticking to the decision. They've consolidated around him. Despite this pressure, it looks like he's going to be the nominee.
Lily?
Yeah, I think that also we need to see what the economic message is going to be during the debate. I mean, everyday Americans that are watching want to see how this is going to hit their kitchen table issues. We're still
well, they say Bidenomics is working. I mean, that's what you're going to hear from Biden.
And here's the advantage for President Trump. He can go back to remind the American people what was the inflation rate, how was gas prices and food prices when he was leading, this great nation. And I think this is going to be a great opportunity. I'm also looking forward to the fact that we are doing a debate in collaboration with the folks from Univision. So it's going to draw a different kind of audience, a lot of those Hispanic voters that are up for grabs.
Where is the Hispanic vote right now, do you think?
Well, it is up for grabs, and that's what's interesting. Neither side cannot take it for granted. We continue to see an erosion every time there's an election and midterms also with the Hispanic vote. So this is going to be very interesting because my community cares about jobs and the economy, and yes, we need a secure border as well.
I mean, every community cares about this, Mark. How important is the issues of economy? What about corruption? Merrick Garland on the hot seat yesterday. What about that? How important is that to voters?
Well, right now with voters, inflation and the economy is far and away number one. I've been puzzled why the Republican candidates don't talk that much about the economy. The last debate was like 2 minutes on the economy. I think they need better economic plans if they're going to be credible. And then I think immigration has come up as a big issue. And I think corruption, less of an issue, although I think it's certainly percolating, in terms of the Biden administration. But crime and immigration have both come up as serious issues after the economy.
Real quick, Ted Cruz on his podcast yesterday said that he thinks that the Democrats are going to trot in Michelle Obama as their candidate because they realize Joe Biden has way too much vulnerability. Do you agree?
I think everything I've ever heard from people close to Michelle Obama is that she is not interested, despite the fact that she would poll pretty well.
Yeah. All right, Mark. Great to see you. Thanks so much, Mark.